The question of the assignment is a product or a app you've used before that you loved, and also one you've used before that you hated or that you didn't find um, to work for you. So you just have to tell us what you love about the first one and what you hate about the second one.
That one is like that one can just drop out of my head now. So let me answer my own.
Okay, yeah, you can
Can
answer
I
it.
call names? Yeah. Can I call names like names of the app, the companies?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can talk now.
Yeah. So mine is Access Bank and PalmPay. Access Bank app is complicated. Their network is slow, and they are always um, fixing their site. Like you just wake up on Saturday and just see a message, you'll be like, sorry for the inconvenience. They're always fixing stuff. They're always fixing stuff, and like sometimes you send money and it won't go through and you be debited. Like that's the bad things about them. But with Pampay, because I use both, Pampay the opposite. Pampay hardly have issues. Hardly like Pampay is like 100 times surer and more like you are more certain that your transaction will be successful um, than Access Bank. Like for Access Bank, if it does not go, you have to send in a mail. But I've never had like a reason to send Pamp a mail for like unsuccessful transaction. Never happens. And also the application for Pamp is easy to navigate. Very easy. Easy is like they are what they call user friendly. Yeah. But Access Bank, even though like Access Bank is not bad, but Pamp is better. Yeah, in every way for me.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Yes, anyone else? Okay, so I think the issue was okay. I did not give a sorry, good evening. Yeah, so as I was saying, I think the issue was I didn't give a submission date, right? So from now on, anytime an assignment is given, the assignment is to be submitted the next day. So basically before the next class. So anytime an assignment is given, you have to submit the assignments before the next class. But I think I didn't inform everyone about that yesterday, so I apologize. But if there's anyone else that wants to speak up or wants to also give the answers now, is there anyone else? Okay, so if there's no one, then let's just move on to what we're doing today. What's for today? So our topic for today will be understanding users. Understanding users. So I would like to ask a question, and I'd like everyone to pitch in. So the question is, has there ever been like a product, or an app or a website that you love using, but you found out that maybe your friends or maybe your um family members or someone also doesn't like using or doesn't use a lot, right? So, for example, maybe you use WhatsApp a lot, then you meet a friend, and the person is like, I don't actually like WhatsApp, it does not work for me, this and this. I actually use Telegram more. Has there ever been any scenario like that? And if there has been, what's your opinion on it? Why do you think it's so? So, yeah, that's the question. So, I would like to hear our responses and answers. You can unmute yourself and give an answer, or you can drop your answer in the chat box. Is anyone speaking? Or can everyone hear me? So can everyone
We
hear me?
can,
Can you hear me, please? Can you react? Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, so who would like to have a go at the question? No one.
I've
So
answered my own, right?
yeah, but this is another question for the topic today, right? So the question is: has there ever been a time you used a product or you used the app or website that you loved using so much, but you found out that maybe a friend of yours or a family member of yours doesn't use it as much or doesn't like it as much as you do, or doesn't even use it at all? Why do you think it's so?
Yeah, it's possible. It's not even possible. It happens a lot. It's just preference, though, and I always do it. And what attracts you to an app might be different from what attracts someone else to the same app. Yeah, and like what you want to do with it, even though like the app has like a general, but we have preferences. So just preferences. So for example, Chrome and um Opera Mini. I'm an Opera Mini person, but I know someone who is like a Chrome person. You get the person compared to an office stuff is too serious. Yeah, so that's an example. And
Yeah,
also social media also. Like Thread, I know most of us are not on Threads, but I love Threads. Yes, yeah. So it's just my preference, and like we like different things that we do.
yes.
Yeah, so
Thank you very much, John.
so that's for me.
Yes, that's a very good example. Threads, for example, I don't use threads at all. I think I prefer Twitter to threads. But yeah, you love using threads. So that's just a classic example of how we all have different preferences when it comes to what products we use or what apps we use. Okay, so anyone else, before I start calling names, okay, please, order for you can go on.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Yeah,
Okay.
an example is Facebook and Instagram. For me, I feel older people like to use Facebook, while not like to use Instagram. I don't know. I don't know. I think because of the
Sorry.
using Instagram. They don't just want to have to. You get me?
No, sorry, I didn't quite get that. Could you please repeat yourself?
Yeah, I talked about between Facebook and Instagram. I think older people prefer using Facebook than using Instagram, while the younger people prefer using Instagram to Facebook. That's an example.
Yes, that's very true. I still use Facebook though, and I'm not old. Well, yes, it's very true. I see some of my friends still mock me for using Facebook, call me a very old person for still using Facebook. But yes, thank you very much for that. Okay, anyone else? Adini Ujidele. Sorry if I didn't pronounce your name well. Could you please chip in? Is Adini on this call? Okay. I'll move on to the next person. Chisom Okafor. Could you please chip in? I can always repeat the question if anyone Would anyone like me to repeat the question? Okay, so I'll repeat the question. The question here is, has there ever been a time where you used a particular product or an app or a website and you loved it so much, but you found out that maybe your friend or maybe your um, family member doesn't just like using that app or doesn't like it as much or prefer another app entirely to it? Okay, some people have answered in the chat, so I'll read out the answers. Okay, for Adini, for him, it's Telegram. I love it so much because of some of the features it has, and to me, WhatsApp is just copying and following after the modeling of Telegram. Yes, I've noticed that too. The reason I think so is because most people started earlier with WhatsApp and have more of the persons they want to relate with, and also notifications that Telegram to bring that might be considered irrelevant. Yeah. Thank you very much, Aline. And Azan, look at me. Okay, I use YouTube a lot, but my friends prefer TikTok. With YouTube, I get my videos and also like the interface. It's TikTok, but my friend doesn't. Yes, so YouTube and TikTok are apparently rivals. I think TikTok is more of short videos too, and I feel that's why some people prefer TikTok to YouTube, while some people have like longer attention span. So I have a friend that is always constantly on YouTube. There's no amount. It doesn't matter how long the video is, whether it's 30 minutes or whether it's 20 minutes or whether it's even 1 hour. It would watch every single one. Why I have other friends too that they are the only app they go to once they wake up is TikTok. So I feel it's based on preference. Yes. Is there anyone else? You can either unmute yourself and speak, or you can drop your answer in the chat box. Okay. Let us waste any of our time. Let's just move forward to what we have for today. So can everyone please see my screen? We can see my screen. Could you just please react? Just drop an emoji or something. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Okay, so our topic for this is understanding users, right? So who are users? Users basically are the people that make use of your app. And everyone is a user because every single one of us make use of one particular app, or it may not even be an app, it might be a particular product. It might be our phones that we're using currently, whether phones or laptops, it's also a product. So we are all users in one way or the other. So our jobs as product designers is to understand the users. In our last class, our yesterday's class, I mentioned that one of the key principles of product design is user experience, right? And your user cannot have the best experience if you don't understand what your user needs. That was why I asked the question, has there ever been a time where one particular app worked for you and it didn't work for others, right? So every single product has what they call their target audience, right? So the particular product someone is bringing out might only work for a particular set of people. That's why, as a product designer, you must always know who your target audience is. For example, for someone selling, let's say, coffee, right? Someone trying to open a coffee brand and trying to sell coffee online, right? It's obvious target users or target audience will be people who drink coffee, right? You can't sell coffee to someone who doesn't drink coffee or someone who prefers tea. So as product designers, we must always identify our target audience And how do we do that? We do that through user research. So what's user research? User research helps product designers to understand the user's needs, their behavior, and pain points. And there are three common methods used to gather insights: interviews, surveys, and observation. So interviews involve one-on-one conversation with users to gather qualitative insights, right? So I don't know if any of us has experienced this. Sometimes you might just be walking on the road, then you see someone just come walk up to you and ask you a few questions. You want to ask you a few questions about maybe a brand or so, or maybe a particular product, and we ask, okay, how do you feel about using this product? What do you like or what don't you like? Stuff like that. For example, if you are a product designer and you're trying to design, let's say, a website, a school website, or you're trying to design an app for students, right? Obviously, your target audience will be students, will be people who need what you're trying to design for, right? So obviously, your interviews will be with students. So that's why interviews is one of the most common ways or common methods of user research. Although it's no, I don't think it's really as common here in Nigeria, because walking up to people in this day and age, asking them questions can seem a little bit weird or upward. But in other countries or internationally, it's a very, very common method of gathering user research. You can just walk up with people or ask them for one-on-one. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be physical. Sometimes it might even be digital. You can just set up a meeting with a random customer and ask them about the product or the competitors in the market, and ask them how they feel about that particular product or that particular industry. Right? Is everyone following me? Are we all following? Okay, I can see just one response. Is everyone following?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so what are the pros and cons of interviews, right? One of the pros is detailed responses. Is because you are literally speaking to the person, so the person will feel more free to like pour out their mind and pour out all what they feel about that particular product at that time. So you get more detailed responses and real-time follow-ups. Let's say there's a particular question you asked and the person is like, okay, maybe you couldn't answer it at that particular time. You can always follow up with the person. You have the person's contact. You can always follow up and ask more questions or even get feedback, right? And also deep understanding of user needs. As I said, interviews allow you to form a one-on-one connection with your users, and that helps you to understand what they would actually need more deeply. But what are the cons? What are the disadvantages? One of them is it is very time consuming. Yes, to have to interview let's say you are having to interview 20 different people, it can be very, very time consuming and can be limited to a very small number of users. Yes, just because it is time consuming, right? So let's say you have 50 users to interview, you would end up wasting a lot of time with each and every one of them. And once you see maybe like you're interviewing at the third person or the fifth person, you begin to see that this is going to take too much of your time. Maybe you now cut the numbers down to 10. So that would reduce the number of users. And if your testing size is very, very small, you are not really getting value, you're not really getting much information from the larger target audience, right? So let's say your target audience is over maybe like 50,000 people, and you're only able to interview like 5 people. It's not those 5 people, yes, they'll give you their opinion, but their opinion cannot really stand for the rest of the people you were not able to interview. But if you have like 50,000 people as your target audience, and you're able to interview like let's say 500, that will be a very good target size. But that will be very, very hard to accomplish with interviews. So what's the best for? It's best for exploring user motivations, pain points, and expectations. So if anyone has any question at any point in time, you can just raise up your hands and I'll love to answer your question. Okay, so next is surveys, right? Surveys are used as use structured questionnaires to gather data from a large audience, right? What are the pros? They are quick, they are cost effective, and allow statistical analysis, right? So surveys are more easier, right? They're more easier to um easier to perform, right? What you just need to do is even more easier now because there are so many websites, there are so many apps that help you to gather surveys or help you to create surveys and even help you to analyze the information from those surveys. So all you just need to do is probably go to your app. One of those apps is Google Forms, right? So you can use Google Forms to like create a survey and just share the link to your target audience. And when they complete it, I think Google Forms helps you to analyze the information as best as possible. There are also some other apps that you can also use to analyze those statistics. So it is very, very efficient and it is less time consuming, right? So what are the cons? Limited depth, right? And potential bias in responses because you're not having a one-on-one connection with each of those users. There's a chance that most of them would not really go in depth on how they feel, right? They would not want to go in depth on how they feel to a form, and there might be potential biases in the responses, right? So you cannot really control what type of questions you want them to ask. So if you ask someone, if there's a question in questionnaire and the person answers it but doesn't really answer it in depth, there's no real way for you to like maybe ask the person to explain more or maybe to follow up on the person, right? So that's just one of the disadvantages of using surveys. And what's it best for? It's best for understanding trends, preferences, and demographics, right? So the third one here it will be observation, and this is the most common and this is the easiest, right? Because we are all observers. We all have our eyes. Anywhere we go, we can always see something, and from our eyes, from there, we can always analyze it in our brains. So observation involves watching users interact with the product in real time. I always say this as a product designer or even as a designer at large, the moment you go into design or the moment you go into product design, you can never look at the world the same way you used to before. Every single way you go, every single place you go, if you see, let's say you are traveling on the bus, you see a billboard, you see a product being advertised, your eyes would already look at that product, and your brain will begin to think different ways, right? So as human beings, our eyes is the best form of user research, right? Because we see these things, we see them happening. We have friends who use these apps, we know people who use these apps. So that's the best form of user research. What are the pros? It reveals actual behavior, not just stated preferences, right? So many people say seeing is believing, right? Rather than the person telling you how the person feels, just by looking at their behavior or how the person interacts with this particular app or this particular product, you can already know how they feel about that particular product, right? What can be the cons? It can be time intensive. I mean, not usually explain user intent, right? So you cannot really judge how the person really feels just by the way you see them, right? Sometimes you may be able to, but sometimes you may not be able to, right? And it can also be time intensive. But what's it best for? It's best for identifying usability issues and workflow challenges. Yes. So does anyone have any questions so far before we continue? Does anyone have any questions so far? If you have a question, you can raise your hand or you can drop your question in chat box. I'll be so happy to answer it. Okay. Since there's none, let's move on to our case study for today. So our case study for today would be, it's a very common brand. Yes, it's OP. So how many of us are aware of OP, or how many of us have heard OP before? I'm very sure most of us. So if you are very familiar with OP, let me see your hands. Just react or something. Send an emoji. Yeah, I believe we are all familiar with OP, right? So let me see. Okay, so this is OPay's website. Um, so what is OPay? OPay is a Nigerian fintech company which became a super app by using user research to address financial and service accessibility issues. Right? Okay, so does anyone remember during the coronavirus or during the when there was naira scarcity, right? Where every time you have to go out to buy something, is either you make a transfer or you have to go and stand in the bank just to get cash. And even getting that is always very, very difficult. So does anyone remember that experience?
Yes.
Yes. So it was a very, very treacherous time for us here in Nigeria. But OP saw that problem and
Yes, I
OP
remember.
capitalized on it. Yes, thank you very much. OP saw that problem and capitalized on it. I could remember really going to the markets or going to yes, going to the markets, and my mom wanted to buy pepper from the markets. I think everything she wanted to buy was not up to 500 naira, and like then there was no cash. And to our surprise, and to my surprise even, the pepper seller had an OP account. Throughout that almost that period, almost everyone, even during the coronavirus, because nobody wanted to touch anybody, nobody wanted to touch money. Your money might be infected. Everybody was so cautious. So people would so much prefer transfer. And to go to the banks, Zenith banks, GT banks, all those banks were just so complicated, even for like the literate people or people from low educational background, right? Maybe for example, the market women or people that just even malams selling yams, etc. They had accounts and they had OPay or PAMPay accounts. OPay saw this problem. They saw that, okay, users would need a form of making payments and they capitalized on it greatly. Almost everybody had an OPay account. And it was working wonderfully well for them because it was making their lives easier and it was making everything just so simple. Yesterday we talked about user experience, right? And user interface. OPay's user interface is just so simple. It doesn't take you more than 5 minutes to sign up. It doesn't take you more than 5 minutes to even verify your bank information or your information itself. Just put in your NIN, put in your BVN, and that's all. If you want to upgrade, it will give you the steps, and it's all just so seamless, even for people who are not really learned. And that was one of the strong points of OPay. So what were the challenges that users faced? What were the challenges that OPay saw users facing? One of them was limited banking access, right? People didn't want to go to the bank, right? Because it was a very bad time to be moving around with cash. And not only that, during the coronavirus, everybody was so careful to not get infected or to avoid crowded places. So going to the bank, queuing up just to open an account would be a very, very bad and dangerous idea, right? And they also noticed that most of those banks had unreliable transactions. As John said earlier, OPay and PalmPay's transactions are just so simple. Their transactions don't take you up to don't it doesn't take up to a minute. Right. I remember there was a time I opened PalmPay and they told me that if their transaction takes more than 2 minutes, right, for it to reach like your receiver's bank, they would give me a cashback, right? I don't know if anyone remembers that, or I don't know if anyone else saw that, right? They were so proud of their quick transaction history that they even promised users that if for some reason the transaction should take more than so time, they would give you a cashback as compensation. That was how confident they were about their transactions, right? And also the need for multiple apps for daily services, right? OPay, you can only on OPay, you can also do more things, not only just transfer. You can also buy you can also buy airtime, you can buy data, you can also buy pay for your GoTV, you can pay for DSTV, you can also pay for electricity, right? So I remember the first time I used OPay to pay for electricity. I didn't even know that you could use OPay to pay for electricity. I had seen it there on the app, but I didn't really trust it, right? But the first time I used it, I was so surprised because immediately the transaction was successful, the code, the pin was sent to my phone number immediately, right? And earlier, if I needed to buy, let's say, if I needed to buy units for my electricity, I would need to go outside. I would need to go to a POS and like pay there, right? And it take me so much time. It take sometimes it will even take a while before the pin gets sent to me or gets sent to the vendor, right? But with OP, everything is just so seamless. It seems like I'm even advertising for them. But yeah, that's just what happens when a lot of research is put into your products, right? So how did they approach this issue, right? Interviews, right? They identified the need for fast and affordable digital transaction. They saw this need and they capitalized on it, right? They also took on surveys. I don't think I don't know if anyone did a survey with OP. I remember doing one back in 2020 or so, right? There was a survey from OP. I think it was on the app, right? So they also indulged in surveys and observation, etc. And all this resulted in so much simplified onboarding for even people that have not used bank apps before, right? Market women that have never used bank apps, that if they needed to make transfers or transactions, they would need to go to the bank and probably take maybe their son with them or take someone with them just to um, talk with the bankers, right? Well, no, Open made everything so simplified. It doesn't take you much time for you to create an account at all. It doesn't take you much time for you to verify your account. And it's also very fast and also has expanded services. Does anyone have any question before I move on? Or is everyone following?
Yes, I'm following.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so now before we move on, I would like us to have a class activity, right? Um the activity is to spot disability issues in everyday products, right? So now before we do that, okay, there's one more thing I would like us to address. Um as a product designer, research is a very, very important stage in your design process, right? And also the ability to arrange information or the ability to put information in a reasonable manner, right? Because after researching, you get those answers, you get those surveys back, you get responses. Your job as a product designer is now to arrange, okay, what is this person trying to say? Okay, what are these people trying to say? What would this mean? Because you can't just copy and paste whatever they put in the form and just send it over to maybe the developer that the person should figure it out. No, your job as a product designer is to interpret what the people are saying, is to understand what they are saying and turn it into simpler words for you to work on, right? So that's where user persona comes in, right? User persona is a very, very important stage in product design. Let me share my screen of a very good example of one. Okay, so this is a case study of a app called GIFCharm, right? So this app is a airplane booking or flight booking app, right? So yes, as a product designer, the first thing we talked about yesterday was to always identify the problem, right? Now, what was the problem for this app? What were users facing, right? Their customers often complain about the complicated booking processes and how frustrating it could be, right? So they would therefore love to make the process as easy as possible. Yes, and yes, that's true. On booking apps in airplanes, most airplane apps, it's very, very sometimes can be very, very complicated, and you don't want to make a mistake when booking a flight. Those kind of things can cost you maybe additional money or sort of. So, of course, the process must be as smooth as possible. So, what are the objectives? The objectives were to design a user-friendly booking interface that simplifies the process and also improve the user metrics, right? Improve our their target audience, bring more people into the app, etc. So let me get to what's yes. So what's the target audience? We talked about target audience. Target audience is a product's main users, right? Who are these products for? What is this particular product for? So this gift jam is mainly 80% of their users are business travelers. So of course, anything they're trying to implement will be for the favor of their target audience, right? So most of their users are people who travel with business class. So of course, they would have to implement that in their user interface and their user experience. Now, this is what a user persona looks like. Let me try to zoom out. Yes, so this is what a user persona looks like. We can also can we also my screen or is everyone following? Okay, yeah, thank you. So this is what a user persona looks like, right? So it is just like a sample, or this is where you all the information you've gotten from your research, from your interviews, your surveys, from your observation. This is just like a summarized version of whatever the users are saying, right? So you just create a fictional user, right? Just to make your maybe anyone else reading this case study might be maybe your boss, or it might be the product manager, or it can even be the software engineer, just to understand what the users themselves want, right? So this is Simon, right? He's 28, lives in New York, he's self-employed. So what is his concern? What does he want from GIFChamp? Having access to essential information like boarding passes, flight details, and airport maps offline will be incredibly useful, especially in areas with poor internet connectivity, right? So this is just like a summarized version of what your target audience entirely would want or would need, right? This is just like make other people that are looking at your work see it from the point of view of your users. So people not be like, okay, why did you do this? Why did you implement this feature? Seeing this, they can know, okay, this is something that so users have asked for and they've always complained about. So that is why I implemented this. So this is just like a summarized version of what goes on in the user's head, right? Yeah, so moving on to our class activity now. If anyone has any question before that, you can ask now. But if there's anything you've not been clear about, you can ask now. Is there anyone? If you don't want to unmute yourself, you can drop your questions in the chat box. We could just be sure everyone is following. I would like everyone to like um give a brief summary of what they understand from what I've been saying, just to be sure I've not been wasting my time. So I'd like everyone to just give you a brief summary of what they've learned so far. So you can start unmuting yourselves, or you'd like me to like call the names. So who would like to go first? Okay, Adini, could you please like give a brief summary of what you've learned so far?
Okay. So I think that okay, as a product designer, we should we should learn to see where the pain points where the pain points of the user. I think yeah, before we can just go ahead to create any platform, any app or any website, we should see what the user needs in that sense, and we can do this by carrying out interviews for me to know what the users actually want before you can go ahead. Because the essence of creating the platform or the piece of the app and website in that is it is to solve its problem. I guess that's the responding.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. Yes, as product designers, we must always identify our users' pain points, and the way we can do that is through research. Yes, next person, Alima, and please unmute your mic and give us like a brief summary of what you understand so far. Is Alima on this call?
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
I am here. So I joined the class late, but from the time I joined, he started talking about understanding our target audience, and
Yeah.
you've made us understand how we can know the concept of a target audience, know how to define our target audience through understanding the user personas, and when defining user personas, the important things to note are their interest and their pain points. And this is how this is what we use to build products. Um, in the course of designing or building a product, sorry, our users are one of the most important features or elements that we need to recognize, because without those users we cannot understand how useful our products will be. So from the time I joined this call, you've made me understand that to build successful products, we need to understand our users, and to understand our users, there are certain things to apply and understand, which is their pain points and interest, and probably who they are. And most times, according to what you just said, these things are generated. They're not necessarily a real user, though we carry out surveys and we try and ask questions. And you also explained, which is true,
Yeah.
that
Thank
in
you
this
very much,
side of
Alima.
town, carrying out surveys are not very easy. All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you very much. Yes. As product designers, our target audience is our primary goal, right? So they will be the one to tell us what we need to change and what we don't need to change. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so the next on my list here is Chiso Mokapo. Will you please unmute yourself and give a brief summary of what you understand so far? So is Chisom on this call? Okay, so I don't think she's on this call, so I'll be moving on to the next person. Okay, Azan Oluwakemi, could you please unmute yourself and give a brief summary of what you understand so far? Doesn't have to be anything complicated. It can just be just from what you understand so far, what saying.
So, good evening. You talked about you showed us you showed us the OP interface, the UI part, and you showed us the interface, the UI part, and you used OP as an example. And then this next one, you showed us a UX case study. A UX case study, they first defined their problem statement was first given. the problem statement was first given, how their customers are having issues and all with the booking. After the problem statements, you talked about user the users the persona the user persona, which consists of the user's pain points, the interests, goal, and also biographies about the users. That's what I understand so far.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord. So the next person here is the next person here on my list is just Jessica. So Jessica, could you please unmute yourself and give us a brief summary of what you understand so far? So Jessica on this call. Okay, so I'll be moving on to the next person. Joshua Moses. Joshua Moses, could you please unmute yourself and give us like a brief summary? So I'll move on to the next person. Would that fair?
Sorry, I was having a bit of challenge with my with my data connection, so I was unable to catch up very well. Please.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so Oli K.
Okay, I've learned about making research from the users of the application. Yeah, you talk about how to make research. You talk about survey and interview. Yeah, we talk about the interview that is so the interview is somehow hard to just to accomplish that mission. Using that method is somehow hard. So like having maybe 50 users, then you interview just only 5 users, then you don't have the opportunity to know like a lot of people's mind about that. Just the let's say 5% of those people using the app is not enough to conclude on maybe the app is well organized or stuff. Okay. The second one, survey. Yeah, when you survey using Google Form or stuff like that, then a lot of people sees their mind there. So guess the survey method is somehow better to the first method.
Yeah.
So then the product, then the product designer, then that person will all those reports, then work on it to then explain everything to his or her teammates, to the web developer. This is what to do, this is what the people need, this is their interest. So that's what I can say about it.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so the next question here is Omotosho.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
What I've learned here is about the observations. You said there is no like a product designer can never look at a particular product the way other people will look at it. It will surely be different. Like yes, just the yesterday lesson I've observed this. any platform, if it's not well designed, if it's not like fast as it should be, I will be like, oh, there is a problem with the web
Yes.
designer or stuff like that. So
Yes.
that's alone covers all that I've learned tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. Observation is a very key. It's a very key method of research because, as I said earlier, we are all users. So whether or not uh, we ask other people for their opinion, we are users at first. We are users first. So we can always see these things. We can always know how these things work before even asking other people for their opinion, right? So you can always pick up your app that you designed yourself or the product you designed yourself and use it, then see how this could be annoying or how this could be frustrating. So yes, we are all users first. So that alone is a plus mark for us. So it's not like we are all new to whatever apps we are using. So yes, thank you very much. The next question is Prosper. Prosper, can you please unmute your mic and you also give some of your words you've learned so far? So it's Prosper on this call. So I'll be moving on to Toby. Is Toby on this call?
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, good
Okay,
evening.
okay.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, actually I was doing something else, but let me just say what I know concerning the users. Yes, as a product designer, you have to be concerned about the users because that is your audience. That is your users are your clients. So um of course you have to make research on you have to create a user-centered design by making researches, um, making researches on what they need, just to feel, just to put yourself in their shoes to feel to get their pain points. Then from there, um, you just have to sieve out to to gather their insights on what they need. Then you do the wireframe like that from there. So that's what I can say. And also
Yes.
the user persona too. So the user persona will just guide you on the kind of the kind of users that are making a particular product for. That's it.
Yes. Thank you very much, Toby. So let me move on to the last person. Olajumoke. Can you please unmute your mic and tell us what you've understood so far?
Um, from what I understood in the class, we talked about use making user research and how important user research is in designing a product. And you also mentioned the different ways of making user research, like conducting interviews and surveys. Then you also mentioned how important it is for getting feedback from users because your opinion alone as a product designer would not cover the entire amount of people that you are designing the product for. So that's the little that I understood from the class.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so if there's anyone that has not spoken, you can do so now.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay, from what I understood from what you've been talking about, you said user research as is the foundation of every great design. Then we talked about you talked about the user research method that we have: observation, survey, and interview. I mean, that of interview, you said it involves one-on-one conversation with the user to gather insights on it. And then the prone has to do with they give you details, respond because an open conversation.
Yes.
There is a real-time follow-up, and then they have this deep understanding of the use. You have a deep understanding of your user to know what the what the product is all about, the parts, the negative and both the positive outcome of your product. Then when it comes to the disadvantage, is time consuming, the sense that before you will finish with one person, because it's an open conversation, it might take up to like 10 or 15 minutes. You
Yes.
get, and then I think it's limited to a few numbers of people, not for a larger crowd, but for a few numbers of people. And then you said it's best used for exploring users' motivation, and then for pinpoint and then expectations. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So what I first said, yeah, we talked about user persona, yeah, and the importance of carrying out research to find the target audience. Yes. So I understand this stage of product design sometimes might not look so appeasing. It's not the fun part, right? The fun part is like actually playing with the colors, actually designing the app or the website itself. But this part is just as necessary because as we discussed yesterday, if your app does not work, if it looks beautiful, everything looks very, very fine, but it does not work, users would not use it. User, see, I've noticed something. People would prefer to use an app or a website that does not look beautiful, right? But as long as it works, as long as it gets them what they need, they are okay with it, right? So if you don't focus on this part of product design, if you don't get it right, if you don't know your target audience, or if you don't know what their need are, then you are bound to push them away or to push those users away. No matter how beautiful your website is, or no matter how beautiful your app looks, or no matter how wonderful your product looks, if it does not work, your users would not buy it or they would not make use of it. Okay. So we'll be having a discussion now, right? So sorry, please give me a minute. Okay, so I would like to paint a scenario, right? Yes, so in at the end of the class, yes, I'll be giving an assignment and I would also post it on the group. Yes, thank you very much for hearing me. Yeah. So right now, I would like to put in scenario. Right, so the scenario is you are designing a food delivery app, right? Just like Glovo, right? For let's say Lagos, right? Your team or your product design team assumes like the typical user is like a young um a youth, right? Who orders lunch every day from office, right? But during your user research, you found out that many users are elderly people struggling with the app, struggling with how to use the app. And some users don't trust using the app to make online payments. They don't trust the online payments of the app. And others also live with areas with bad internet and can't complete orders easily. So now the question is, as a product designer, what assumptions did the design team make, and how could these hurt the product? That's the first question. So I'll repeat myself, right? So you are the lead product designer of your team, right? And your team, all of you are trying to come up with a design for a food delivery app like Glovo, right? So your team assumes that okay, of course, the app would be mainly for young people, right? Because most young people are the ones that use or order foods more commonly as an assumption, right? Then, but doing your user research, you found out that elderly people also try to order food online, but they are just stopped by how complicated the process is. While some of them are stopped because they don't trust the online payments platform, right? It looks shady and it does not work well sometimes. While some even have bad internet connection and the app ends up wasting a lot of time and they could not complete the orders. So the first question is like, as the leader of your team, what assumptions did you think your team made, and how badly could they have hurt the product in the long term if you had not made done research, if you had not gone back to conduct user research? So anyone can answer, and drop your answer in the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and speak. Okay, so did everyone hear me?
Please, can you repeat the question for us a bit?
Yes, okay. I feel the question, yes, is a bit long. So let me just try to shorten it, right? So you are creating an app for the food delivery plans, right? And you noticed that, or you assumed that your products, your target audience would be young people, right? Because they are most likely to order food online, right? But doing your user research, you found out a different thing. You found out that actually elderly people also love to order food online, but for some certain reasons, like the fact that sometimes it might be very complicated for them to navigate through the app, or sometimes due to slow internet connection, the app ends up taking some time to load and they're not able to complete their orders, or maybe just that when they're trying to make payments, it takes them to another app, takes them to different websites to try and make payments, and it's all just so overwhelming for them. So, as a product designer, what do you do? Do you prioritize those people you figured out in your research, or you prioritize your assumption, right? Because it's a very valid assumption that okay, yes, young people would also love to order food online. They also love to order food online. So what do you prioritize? Is it the majority or the overlooked minority? So would you tailor your app towards being more useful to the elderly people, or would you tailor it more to be useful to youths?
Sorry, sir, from your explanation, I
Yeah.
believe that the app, no, if I'm the product designer, I will make it to suit the need for the elderly because they are the ones that make use of it most. So it will tailor towards towards my research or my findings about the use about those about those who are making use of it. The elderly which are the users mostly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other person? Any other person?
Um, as for me, I will make sure I will design the app for it to suit those who are purchasing the product more, because it is about you. I'm designing something which by the end of the day I have to gain something from the app, or I have to serve my customers with what they need in order that when next time they will come back and purchase some of the products. So I'll make sure I'll consider the elderly people than the youth.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Oscar. Would anyone else like to chip in? I'd like everyone to remember that these activities would be graded and would all add up to your final grade at the end of the class. So they are very, very important. With that being said, anyone else? If you don't want to like unmute yourself, you can also drop the answer in the chat. I would read it out. Okay, look at me. Look at me, you can please go on. Look at me, your hands are up. Do you have a question or would like to answer the question?
Please, can you ask the question again? My service was bad.
Okay, yeah, sure. So the question is, you are asked to design an app for a food delivery company, right? And um your business, the company tells you that their target audience is youths, right? People who are in their young, maybe like mid 30s and below, right? And but upon doing your research, you found out that actually most people that would prefer to use a food delivery app are the elderlies, right? And the reason why they are not making use of it are for certain reasons, like um maybe design problems, or maybe because the apps are usually so overwhelming for them to use and so complicated. So that's why those elderlies are not really making use of the app. So as a product designer, which target audience would you prioritize, the elderlies or the youths?
So, as a product designer, I'm actually going to first, once I finish my survey, I will, and I see that it's actually the elderlies that use the that needs the app more, the products more. I'm actually going to pitch it to the business. I'm actually going to pitch it to the business owners that why can't we make a app that's going to be for both the youths and also the elderlies, that is going to be user friendly for the elderlies and also for the youth, that both age range will be able to navigate the interface of the app, of the product. And after that, I will wait for their feedback.
Yes, thank you very much, Luakemi. Yes, I love your answer very well. That's just
Okay.
because okay, would anyone else? Okay, you can go on.
Yes, I think I will satisfy the person that asked me to go ahead with the business, the person that asked me to design it for the youth. From the look of it, if I go for the youth, it's there is probability that the youth are still going to use it for the headers at home, because we know that currently the youth are the people using most apps, even the headers, like they are just like 30%, and for the youth is still 70%. So the person that asked me to design the web has the knowledge of it before telling me to design it. So I would rather use the go for the youth than the headers. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much for paying me. Yes. Would anyone else like to contribute?
Okay, let me contribute.
Yes, okay.
To me, I think is best, we'll merge the both together. I'll make the app to be convenient also for the elderly and then for the youth also. They have to coexist together. That's what I'm going to do to satisfy my customer, to satisfy my own research from what I've carried out. So I'll combine them together. They can coexist together and make the app easy to navigate, both for the elderly and for the young youth.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, Alima, your answer. I hope you can go on.
I really agree with Nwodo. Thank you very much for that highlight. I say so because as a designer, as a product designer, I know that I am creating a product, or I'm joining teams of developers to create a product that will solve a problem, that will bring solutions to people. Regardless of the survey I make and I get the most impact from a particular target audience, I don't think I would just settle for that target audience, because when creating a product, you are actually giving people value that they did not know existed. You are actually making them understand that you have this problem and this is the solution that you need. So regardless of which target audience answers more to my survey, I think I would create a product where everybody can use and it's easy. You gave an instance of OPay services, those financial services. The target audience, I'm sure they are looking for people that are not so tech savvy to be able to use that platform. But this platform now has been created in such a way that millions of users, both tech savvy people and non-tech savvy people, use it. So me as a designer, I think I would prefer to create a product that everyone would love to use. And then my actual target audience will be very comfortable using my product, and to also attract other users too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you thank you very much. Yes, that was very well said. Is there anyone else I would like to pitch in before I talk? Okay, so someone dropped an answer in the chat. Chisom says she would prioritize the youth. Yes. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, Odafe also says you prioritize youth because they have a larger population. Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so yes, I love everyone's answers. That shows that we're all listening. And yes, as a product designer, I know I said yesterday that our primary focus is to users, right? Our primary goal is to satisfy the users. But we must not also forget that whatever business we're working for, or whatever company we're working for, also has business goals that they wish to satisfy. So I've experienced this a lot, and I don't know if anyone who like delivers services or is like a middleman between the users and whatever company they're working for understands that sometimes a company might say one thing, and if you work only on that particular thing and it doesn't give them results, all they will tell you is that they have paid you your money, so why are they not receiving results? The same thing can happen if they give you a particular thing to work on and you find out that, okay, this particular app or actually works more with a different target audience, and you focus only on that target audience, and the target audience ends up not generating enough revenue for them or not meeting the company's business goals, they will call you up, right? So your job as a product designer is as like an intermediary between whatever company you're working for and the users. You must always find a way to satisfy both of them, right? So in this scenario here, creating an app that would work for both target audience would be the best solution. So that number one, you end up satisfying the main target audience, and number two, you end up also satisfy the company that hired you, right? So as product designers, sometimes we are pushed to make difficult choices, right? So your research might show that the best target audience for this particular company are actually the elderly people. But if the particular company is telling you that, okay, well, we want our product to be targeted to this particular set of people, right? We want it to be targeted to this particular set of individuals. Your job as a product designer is to satisfy both people. Because if at the end of the day you do what the company says and they don't get much revenue, they're still going to come back to you and say that, okay, what happened? Where did you go wrong, right? So your job as a product designer is to satisfy both the users and the company that you're working for. And I know, yeah, and everyone answered beautifully to that question. So thank you much. Thank you very much, everyone. I think that brings us to the end of today's class. If anyone has any question, you can please ask them now within the next 5 to 6 minutes. So if anyone has any question or just wants to contribute, hasn't gotten a chance to contribute, you can do so now.
Yeah. My question is this.
Okay.
Can the company's goal be altered? The companies can have a goal, what they want to achieve. The reason why a particular product is being designed. What about after the design, and the company found out that the reality on ground is not according to their goal? Is it something that is wrong for them to come back again, irrespective of their company goal, whatever the company goal, the company want to achieve? Is it wrong for them to come back and alter it?
Yes. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, that's why I loved Azan from his answer, right? He said after making your research, yes, after making your research, you found out that okay, the real target audience for this particular brand is very, very different from what the company that hired you wants. You can always go back to them and present whatever research you've gotten. Get their feedback. That's why, as I said earlier yesterday, feedback is very, very important. Some companies might be willing to change, some might not be. So you must always keep them in the know. You must always communicate with whoever you are working with. So you found out, you made a research, you found out about this particular stuff, then you can always take it back to them and say, okay, as your product designer, I actually did some research, and this is what I found from this research. This is what our users need. This is what your users similarly want, right? Some companies will say, okay, we'll gladly shift our goals towards that. While some will tell you that, okay, they're already aware of that, but they're just trying to push to new grounds, right? They're just trying to get a new target audience that they've tried that before, probably it didn't work. Like, for example, this Drift Champ, right? This is a airplane booking app for mainly business travelers, right? So you might actually find out that most people that want to travel are not business travelers. Maybe they are just people that want to go on vacation, or like they do not plan their vacation well and they need help. They need a more structured or a more detailed app when it comes to booking flights and planning vacations. You can actually find that out in your research, and you can present it to them, and they can be like, okay, no problem, but we can always change our target audience to that. They might also tell you that they've already built their brands on prestige. Like there are some brands that are just for, let me say, the rich people, right? There are some brands that they built their brands on the on the rich people, on the elite people in the community. Like for example, the common example is Toyota and Lexus, right? So Lexus and Toyota, they are both made by the same company, right? But Toyota was making cars. The Toyota cars were the first ones to come out, and they came out. They were very, very cheap. They were not into it. The Toyota cars are like one of the cheapest cars in the market, right? So yes, they satisfied that target audience, but they found out that they needed a whole different type of brand entirely for the elite people, for the people who are ready to spend money. And they could not do that anymore with Toyota because everybody had already seen Toyota as a brand that's as a brand known for its affordability, right? As a brand for cars that are cheap. So if they just bring out a new car that is like times two of their previous prices or times three of their previous prices, it will pursue to send away their customers, right? So they created a separate company entirely, right, called Lexus, a whole new brand of car, and those cars were known for their prices, right? They were very, very expensive, and they were satisfying two different target audiences: the elite people, the people who had the money to spend, and those people who only wanted to spend a little, right? So some companies will be willing to shift to whatever your research says, while some will tell you that they've already built their brands in a particular way, and for them to change it right now is not one of their goals, right? But your job as a product designer, no matter what they say, is just to try as much as possible to satisfy both the users and the people that are hiring you. So yeah, are you clear now? Okay, so I'll read out Adini's
Yes,
question.
yes.
Okay, thank you. I read that Adini dropped a question. Yeah, it said, okay, is it mandatory to carry out survey or interview before going on with product design? I'll say yes. Let me just say it out right now. Yes, it is very, very mandatory as a product designer because, as I said earlier, the first step of the most important part of product design is your user experience. If your user experience is bad, no users will want to make use of your product. And if you don't carry out research, if you don't carry out your surveys, your interviews, it's not like mandatory you use a survey. It's not mandatory you use an interview. That's why I gave like three different methods, right? And their pros and their cons, right? So you can pick which one works best for you. But you must always go into your product design or start your product design with a form of research. So you know what you're designing, who you're designing for, and what you are designing, right? So yes, I would say it's mandatory for you to carry out research before your product design. Don't be too carried away with the colors you want to add or the fonts you want to use. First, get to know your users and what they want. The second question is there a range of responses that can be considered as good to go responses before embarking on product design? Yeah, as I said earlier, it all depends on your target audience size, right? So if you have, let's say your target audience is 50,000, you can't just take responses from 5 people and say you would use that responses to design an app for 50,000 people, right? So it all depends on your target audience. If you have a very large target audience, of course, your sample size will be very large, fairly large also, right? But it's not mandatory you use the whole target audience, but just make sure it is balanced, right? You can't have a large target audience and use a small sample size. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so I hope I've answered your question, Adeni.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Aliman, you have your hands raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. As a product designer,
Yes.
when do you know when is the right time to tell your stakeholders or whoever that you are designing for? When is the right time to tell them no? What kind of demands do they give that you can say no to? Because I believe you cannot design everything that they want. And it's not every feature that is going to fit the demands, especially when it hits the market. When can
Yes.
you say no? And even if you have to say that no, how can you best explain it to your stakeholders so they don't get offended and they're able to understand you?
Okay, yes. That's a very, very important question. First and foremost, you must always remember that they are the one paying you to do the job, right? So of course, that's the most important part. But also, as I said earlier, you must always also prioritize the users. So that's why I also said research is very, very important because you can't just go and meet the people that are paying you thousands of naira, possibly, or even millions to design an app, and you don't go there with research to back up whatever you are trying to convince them of, right? So if you go to them with enough research and you reason with them so much that even them they can see that okay, this thing, of course, our target users are this and this and this, but with this research you've brought to us, we can also see it clearly that okay, this should be our new goal, right? So as I said earlier, sometimes they might shift to your favor, sometimes they might not. And if they don't, the best thing you can do, if you are not able to like implement both of them, because I know sometimes the target audience might be different type of people, right? Like for example, instead of designing an app for children, designing an app for children, and the your research says that your target audience are adults, right? So that's a very, very like wild and different range of target audiences. So it might be very, very difficult to implement features that will be very nice for children, but will also be compatible for adults. So the best thing in that case, even after like maybe placing your um concerns towards the people that are hiring you or towards the board, and they still say no, that okay, they would like to stick with the children as their target audience, the best thing to do is just follow their advice, right? Follow whatever they have to say and try your best. Just do your best to design according to that goal. Because remember, at first, before you became like a user-friendly person, you are like the employee first, right? So you must always adhere to the company rules or whatever rules they give you. So you can always later on, present to them, or even after the product has been released, and they can now see that okay, this particular stuff doesn't actually work. They can all see it themselves that okay, maybe our target audience was not actually this. That's when you can now present your ideas, right? But just make sure you are backing up your ideas with enough research. That's just all I have to say. I think companies nowadays are reasonable. Everybody wants to make profits. And as a product designer, if you can assure them that whatever users you are designing for will give them the best profits, they would want to go your way. So yeah, are we all clear? Are we clear?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so since there is no other question, I think our time is fast spent. We spent 5 minutes extra. So okay, I'll be rounding up with the class now. But before that, I'll drop the assignment on the group, and what to submit. The assignment is to be submitted before our next class, right? So you submit your answer in a PDF or a Microsoft Word document with your name, with your full name, and your email. So did everyone get that? Did everyone understand me?
Yes, I do.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining today. You have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much.
Good night, sir.